incompatible with totalitarian administration. For in the uncertainty of politics, the danger of arbitrary change and the fear of personal revenge, every man whose position makes him either strong or vulnerable must protect himself against surprise by reserving from the common pool whatever power he has managed to acquire. Thus there is, in the end, no common pool at all. Irresponsibility of the ruler causes irresponsibility of the subject. The conception of the Commonwealth no longer exists outside propaganda, and politics become the politics of feudal anarchy, which the personal power of an undisputed despot may conceal but cannot alter. And how wrong many of us were about that despot too, who has often been represented as a tool, but whose personal power was in fact so undisputed that he rode to the end above the chaos he had created and concealed its true nature, even presiding from his grave over his weak and worthless subordinates in the dock at Nuremberg. If this absolutism was unchecked, uncontrolled by any external force, it is vain to suppose that any internal resistance could have corrected it. No man can escape the corruption of absolute power. The inhibitions, the cautions, the introspections which may influence the exercise of power when it is limited by insecurity or competition do not survive those limitations. And in Hitler's last years, it will be futile to look for the diplomacy and concessions of his more tentative days or the reservations and occasional humilities of Mein Kampf. Then there is Nazism itself, the religion of the German Revolution which underlay and inspired its temporary but spectacular success, and was as important an element in its politics as was Calvinism in earlier convulsions. Many worthy scholars have examined this vast system of bestial Nordic nonsense, analyzing its component parts, discovering its remote origins, explaining its significance, and disposing of its errors. But of all the works on that dispiriting subject, the best, the most illuminating, the most valuable seem to me to have come not from the conscientious scholars, nor from the virtuous victims of the movement, but, since failure is often a better political education than either industry or virtue, from one disappointed Nazi. Hermann Rauschning, an East Prussian magnate, was one of those military aristocrats who joined the movement in its early days, hoping to use it for their own ends, and who, having made their contribution to its success and been cheated of their reward, saw the final ruin of their class in the purge of 1944. More intelligent than the rest, Rauschning escaped early from the movement which he could neither control nor stop, and in 2 books exposed with terrible clarity the true significance of the Nazi movement. His motives had not been pure either in joining or in leaving the party. He was no Democrat, no pacifist, no martyr, if these are pure professions, and the intellectual clarity he achieved was the clarity not of suffering but of disillusion. But truth is independent of the stimulus that has provoked its discovery, and the conditions that have guided its expression, and to say that Rauschning is no better than his class is an irrelevant criticism of his books. In those books, he demonstrated as none other has done the essential nihilism of the Nazi philosophy. This nihilism, the expression of frustration by the existing world, had inspired the Nazi movement in its early days. It was obscured in the days of power by other more positive interests which became parasitical upon it. But in the last days, with which this book is concerned, when all hope and profit had departed, when all rivals had been eliminated or had fled, and the party in indisputed power had nothing positive to offer any more, it was to this nihilism that it returned as its ultimate philosophy and valediction. The voice that issued from the doomed city of Berlin in the winter of 1944 and the spring of 1945 was the authentic voice of Nazism, purged of all its accessory appeals, its noonday concessions, and welcoming once more the consequences of its original